Yes, I'm getting a sign that we should start. Hello. How's your conference been so far? Great. In a way, this is probably the scariest talk I've ever given. Um, because it's very personal. It's about a lot of the stuff that I have been doing the last 12 years. And if you guys don't like it, that means that, well, that kind of invalidates me. There's also no better place in the world to give this talk than right here in Porto, because you may not know this, but my second ever international conference talk was here in Porto, and that was the first ever NDC Porto. And I've spoken at all the NDC Portos ever since, so this is the only event in the world where I was present at all the editions. So this feels like the right place to tell you my story. Now, first, let me tell you a little bit about me. My name is Hannes. I live in Belgium. I have 3 beautiful children and a beautiful wife. Well, I call her my wife. We only got engaged last year, but we've been together 20 years, and with the 3 kids, I feel like that still counts. At Access, my employer, I am the lead coach for the .NET team, well, until very recently. I've been a .NET backend developer since 2005, and I really love knowledge sharing. Like, the thing you see me do here today is what I live for. I'm also a line breaker. I play guitar in the world's most popular IT team's rock and pop parody cover band. If you add enough adjectives, the sample set becomes 1, so we are the best, right? I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and I'm Service Bus champion. Now, at Access, I've been working there for 13 years now. And I swear this will become relevant throughout this talk, because a lot of my story is going to be about this. But I started out as a .NET consultant with, at that time, around 7 years of experience. I very quickly made it into becoming a coach for my colleagues. In 2018, I became a principal consultant, which was like the highest rank of consultant that we had at the company. And since 2020, I've also been operating as the head of learning and development. And some of those roles I no longer actively do. I don't actively consult for customers anymore, at least not on a day-to-day basis. But all of that work I have been picked up. I've added on top of the things that I was already doing, and we have shifted things around quite a few times. Now, my story is going to be about this time, about a lot of the things that I have done. And when I was constructing the story, I figured this is a lot of different threads that go throughout the history of my career, and I need to be able to tie it all together. And it doesn't really make sense. And that made me think of one of my possibly favorite movies of all time, Pulp Fiction. Who here has seen Pulp Fiction? I must have seen it at least 15 times. So when I was thinking of this movie, well, the thing is not just a source of memes and quotes. I mean, it is. There's really a lot of memes out there that are based on Pulp Fiction. But to me, what makes Pulp Fiction special is not just the dialogue, it's not just the casting. It is also the fact that it has a non-linear storyline. The order in which the story is told is not the order in which it happens. And I think I'm just going to do that for today. So I made a couple of storylines throughout my 13-year experience at Access that I can hopefully draw some meaningful conclusions from for you all. And at the end, we will try to make one big conclusion out of all of it. Right? Sound good? Great. So here we go. Chapter 1, knowledge sharing. As I mentioned, I love knowledge sharing. And it was, for me, it was one of the big motivators to switch jobs to a company where knowledge sharing was actually a thing. So I moved into Access, and we still have a thing called competence centers. And on a competence center, one of our colleagues tells a story about some of the stuff that they either have been researching on their free time, or they have been working on at their job, or whatever. And we would gather at the office with obviously pizza and beer, or nowadays we switch the foods around. We have some healthier options as well. But we meet up at the office at 6 o'clock, and we spend 3 hours, of which we probably spend half talking to each other and eating, and the other half actually doing meaningful knowledge sharing stuff. Usually 1 or 2 presenters in an evening. And the primary goal for us back then to organize knowledge sharing was to help the attendees of the Competence Center to actually grow, to learn something, right? But over the years, we have realized that there are so many other beneficial side effects of doing this. Because as a speaker, if you research your topic and you stand in front of your colleagues, you also grow. You learn more about the thing and you get deeper understanding of the thing as well. You also get recognition from your colleagues. You now have become the de facto expert on this one thing. That means if somebody else gets blocked, they're gonna phone you up and ask you the questions, right? Whether that's a good or a bad thing, you can leave that in the middle. But it's also because we spend a bit of time eating over, talking to each other over food and beverages, we also connect our people together a lot better. And that's very important. And I don't really like saying this, but it was super cheap because all of it happened after hours. Literally, the only cost we had as a company was the pizza and the beer, which is like peanuts when you compare it to developer wages, right? So at some point, around when we became the first generations of coaches at Access, we decided we need to get the ball rolling to do more of this, right? And that meant in the beginning that we decided to give some sessions ourselves, like set a good example, get some sessions in there, like do them yourself, and then motivate some people who you know are ready. And then you push it a little bit more, right? You start to reward this when you do end-of-year reviews with people and attach their raises a little bit to the fact that they have done some knowledge sharing. And also, when we set goals for the next year, I mean, some of my colleagues are here, so they can probably prove that they will raise their hands. We also put it in their targets for the next year, like you should be given, right? Rival? I've done that with you for sure, right? But since everybody's growing, everybody's winning, it didn't feel bad for us to do that, but it was still a thing that we did. And we got to a point where the whole system got up to speed, and we had so many different people who actually came to us who wanted to do sessions. There was a point where we had, just in the .NET group of our company, we had about a session a month. That was just pre-COVID, and our role was literally to manage the agenda, to make sure that the food was ordered. Fantastic. But we also had some painful realizations. There were some people who were always there, and there were some people that were never there. And it made us realize, like, what's going on here? And it's often very simple things, like, well, you usually do those on a Thursday night, and that is when my wife has a hobby and she's out of the house, so I'm looking after the kids. So I would love to make it, but I really can't. Or they're in a sports club, or one of our colleagues has a muscle disease, which makes it very hard for him to be out late in the evening. It's very tiring for them. It's not that they don't want to be there. And it gave us a very, very hard decision to make. Either we try to include everyone, and that also means slowing things down, because then 1 a month was no longer possible. And that felt like we were also losing something because we had momentum going. And it's led us to go to the approach where we experimented with formats a little bit. We did some of the, nowadays we do some of the sessions at lunchtime as well. So everybody works from the office, we do the session at lunchtime so you can be home in the evening, right? Or we changed locations. We used to do all of our talks in Antwerp, where our main office is. And then the people from Ghent always had to travel a long way. So now we alternate locations. Right, Lucas? So different times of day. And we also had a streaming and a recording setup. So the people who kind of want to watch it but can't be physically there can either watch it remotely or can watch the recording later. And we're still struggling with a lot of this. I'm going to be very honest. Like, not all of the sessions are recorded, and not all of them are streamed, and sometimes we forget to alternate our locations. But I mean, it is a process for us to try to be as inclusive as we can, but we don't necessarily want to slow things down. Now, the slowing down happened anyway, as you will see in a minute. But I'm going to first talk about this. At some point, we wanted to bring a lot of this knowledge sharing together in a big conference day. And the first one was 2018. This is the agenda of our internal conference. So we're only, at the time that this happened, we were probably like a 200-person company. As you can see, there's more than 35 talks up there. It's only our speakers, probably some of the speakers are in this room even. It's our speakers speaking for our people. So we would just take a whole day during the daytime advantage. Nobody would have to miss anything at home. Well, if they stayed for the party, they would. But like the daytime program was in work hours. And this felt like such a joint effort because everybody is living towards that day. Either you are preparing a talk yourself or somebody else that you know is preparing a talk. And we all come together in one huge team effort, and you watch your colleagues' talks and you give your own talks, and we have a nice unloading after party at the end. And this is great. I love this because I love this. I love conferences. It also kind of cannibalized like a lot of the knowledge sharing evenings. It made them slow down a little bit. We didn't no longer have one a month because people were focusing on giving their talks here instead of on a normal evening or lunch break. We also realized that not everybody likes that big crowdy event where 200, 300 people convene, where the normal knowledge sharing sessions were more often they were smaller groups. And much more comfortable to attend for some personalities. So we kind of need to be doing both. I think like this is giving us a lot of value, but we need to find a balance in where we include as many people in that story as we possibly can. And then COVID happened. And of course, we couldn't meet up in person anymore. That was the first very, very tangible effect of the pandemic. But the thing that we notice most now, when the pandemic is over, I mean, COVID infections are rising again, but still what we notice is people have rearranged their lives. They value the time at home differently than they did before. They have picked up more hobbies at home. They are putting way more value on the time they spend with their families because they have been doing that nonstop for a few years. And motivating people to come to the office in the evenings has become a lot harder. And that's totally okay. It's just a reality we'll have to deal with, right? And that doesn't mean finding ways to force everyone to come to the office in the evenings. Is no, we have to be more creative and experiment with all the things that we're doing and see what works and what doesn't. We haven't found the silver bullet yet, but there's a lot of things happening and it's all moving. So we're experimenting with all the formats. We're taking things a little bit slower than we did before. We lowered mainly our own expectations, where we would get 40, 50% attendance out of the group on a session before COVID. That number is going to be quite a bit lower as well. Now, what we've also noticed, and mainly in this rebuild stage of our knowledge sharing culture, what we've also noticed is that the people we call upon to give those sessions, they're already wearing a lot of hats in the company. They're maybe already coaching people, or they're being buddies for the juniors, or they're doing a bunch of things already in excess of what they're doing at their day job at the customer. And if you ask them to give a session, that just piles on top. And we have to be very aware of what we're asking of people. So yeah, we're taking it slower, but we are rebuilding. Now, what I want you to take away from this storyline is, if you want to build a culture where people are sharing their experiences with others, you have to set an example by yourself. do that first before anything. Experiment with what you're doing, but also make sure that you reward people's effort, because there is a lot of effort that goes into standing in front of your colleagues, especially the first time, to tell a story about the stuff that you've been playing with. And make sure that you're aware of who's attending and who's not attending, and try to draw conclusions. And there are some people that you will never reach, but if there are very clear reasons why those people cannot be there and you can do something to facilitate that, you should definitely do that. And be aware of what you're asking of people, because, well, it's only a job, right? So that was the knowledge sharing storyline. And I want to get to the point why I really made this talk. It's because I've noticed a dynamic in the tech industry, and it's been ever present. I noticed a dynamic that is making it both very essential to do what we're doing and also making it very hard. When you look at a developer's career, their skills usually grow as the career advances, right? That is no secret. Unless you're hiding in a basement somewhere, your skills will grow. Now, if you're a rich corporation, you are willing to pay top dollar for those experienced profiles. And I'm talking about big corporations, I'm talking about startups with venture capitalism behind them and so on, because they all act like we need to move fast. We need to get the top talent on board. We need to get the top people. It doesn't matter how much it costs. We've got like buckets full of money anyway, because we don't have time to train people, right? And that inevitably raises the value of those people and the price that you have to pay if you want to hire somebody like that. Now, if you're another corporation that doesn't have that much money, that means that you're left hiring more junior people, right? Because finding senior people can still be something that you really want to do, but they're either going to be very hard to find because they've all got jobs, and when you find them and they align with your mission, then you're going to have to pay them a lot, right? So everybody recognizes this, right? Silicon Valley wages are through the roof, right? Now, what this means is that you often see people starting their career somewhere where they will get hired as a junior or a media developer, and they grow and they grow and they grow up to the point where they come on the radar of the rich corporations, and then they switch over to one of those and get the big fat paycheck. I mean, nothing weird with that, but that means that if you want to keep people on board after they have grown, you're going to have to do a lot of effort to fight against that money that's coming for them anyway. And this whole system puts a general pressure on wages throughout the entire industry. And the ironic thing of all of this is that the rich corporations, they cannot exist without all of the companies who are actually training the people that come from college to a point that where they become interesting for the rich corporations. They can't exist without them, yet they are pricing them out of the market. It's very dark, isn't it? Now, how do you cope with this if you are not a rich corporation with a bunch of venture capitalist money? Well, first of all, you train your people, because you will be hiring a lot of people that have maybe a little bit less experience than what you would ideally like, but that's not a bad thing. You get to form their careers. You get to train them. You get to train them the way that you want them to be trained. That's actually a good thing. But if you want to keep them for a longer time, you're going to have to do more than train them, because the market is going to be pulling their sleeves. And if you thought that this was going to be a cheaper approach, it really isn't. Because as they grow, you're going to have to make sure that they have a salary that matches what is normal in the market. But they'll still be in your company. You've managed to hire them, so it's still a good thing. You have them on board, right? But you still have to pay the wages. You also have to give them a perspective to grow, because people don't leave because they feel underpaid. People leave because they feel like their career is going nowhere. If they can't picture where they will be next year or in 3 years or in 5 years, they will always be comparing that when some company pulls their sleeves like, hey, if you come work for us, we're going to make you an architect because you're already a senior developer, we're going to make you an architect. And that's a story to tell you. And they forget to see that they're comparing their job today with their future somewhere else. So what you failed to do as an employer at that point is to visualize to them what their career would look like with you. And it's very easy to forget that because we're all struggling to just get our work done and give our knowledge sharing sessions and all of that stuff, that we forget to think about and take a step back and look at where we're going to be in a few years. And if you make that very visual, then people will not be comparing apples to oranges, they'll be comparing apples to apples. And that's very important if you want to keep them on board. And if you think that you are doing stuff well, then you should highlight that, not only to the outside world, but also to your own employees. And what proved extremely valuable to us to find out what we were doing well and what we were doing not so well was measuring. And it's true. And I know that these tools sometimes get a bit of a negative connotation because a lot of companies use these tools as a marketing tool to hire people. We're a best workplace, right? But what this gives you is a standardized list of questions that you can compare to other companies in your industry. And you will get those statistics so you can see like here we are scoring well above average and here we're scoring below average on specific question levels, but also on specific demographics within your employees. As soon as the demographic becomes too small, you can no longer filter on it and it will be anonymized. So you cannot point out a specific person when you look at the results of these, but you will see the general trends. And you will very well see we need to do better here, here, and here. So if you use these tools to that advantage and you have the desire to improve the way that you run things, they can be a valuable tool, but you got to use them right. We also added some custom questions that were very specific to the way that we do things, also to get a little bit of a barometer, like how are those things landing? And that is very important when an organization is going through change, because you'll need anonymized feedback on that sort of thing as well. Now, salary negotiations is something that you cannot just avoid, right? The market is what it is. Money is a thing that we need to talk about, or like entire compensation packages. So we felt that it was a good idea to do salary negotiations on a yearly basis and carve out a specific time with it for everyone to actually do it. And we would expect both of the sides of the table to have done their homework. And for us, doing homework is very much making the year that's behind us self-evident. And we do that by putting good follow-up on people and tackling potential problems throughout the years. Like the end of year talk should not be where you correct behavior, right? You should give people time to correct their behavior before you're at the end of year talk. But the year that's behind us should be self-evident, both to the consultant and the person doing the pay negotiation. And if they have grown a lot, they should get a bigger raise. And if they have grown very little, we should still talk about it because they might get an offer from somewhere else or whatever. And we want to appreciate the effort that people are putting in. And we also benchmark our salaries against the rest of the market. There are agencies that will do this for you. They have standardized categories for certain job responsibilities. And you can send them a list of anonymized, but a list of your employees and how many years of experience they have, how many years of experience they have with the company, what job they're fulfilling today, what their pay is. And you can benchmark that against what is the market average. What you'll get back is a list of this person is probably a little bit underpaid. This person is probably a little bit overpaid. There's usually reasons for that. Um, don't be blind to this, because if you're underpaying someone, that means that the offer will be so much sweeter somewhere else. So that's a gap you need to close. So if you know that there is some pressure there, then you should be actively giving them bigger raises every year because they're underpaid, right? And it's not, if you don't do this on a regular basis, you're just putting your head in the sand and you're blind to whatever is going on. So what I want you to take away from the economic part of my story is measure what's going on and be aware of what's going on in the market around you, because the market around you is going to affect how you do things in your company. And then you have to decide what kind of company you want to be. Are we the kind of company who has money to hire the expensive profiles? Then fine, that can be a strategy. If you're a company that wants to hire younger people a lot and help them grow, that's also fine, but then you have to be aware what your strategy should be there, right? And there's a lot of gray area between those two extremes, but it's definitely something that you will have to be aware of. And continuously try to improve, because if you measure, you can improve. Like, okay, this year we're going to tackle that and that and that thing that we've noticed from our questionnaire. We're going to leave the rest out of it, and we'll try to do better on those next year. And if you treat your people well, that goes with any strategy that you might possibly come up with, that will always be beneficial. Because it's always easier to keep somebody with you than it is to hire somebody new. Always, right? And then there's a fun story in between. Pulp Fiction does this as well. Some meaningless shit that comes in between the whole story. So I had a moment, I was still a young coach. This timeline-wise is very much at the beginning of the 13 years. I had just gained control over the training budgets for my team. And I had an idea. How about we go on a weekend? And we rent out a big holiday house. My team was 17 people at the time, so it wasn't all that huge. How about we rent out a huge holiday house in the Belgian Ardennes? We go there, we do a day of knowledge sharing, and then the evening we just barbecue, we drink some beers, and the day after we just go do something fun, right? I learned the hard way that there's a lot of my consultants who are afraid of heights, and I had elected to go and do rock climbing and a rope course, yeah. So learning opportunity for me, right? But when I pitched the idea to my boss, it's like, hey, Benjamin, this is what I want to do. He went, we are not a Boy Scout group. So, well, I was studying, like, how am I going to approach this? And basically, I realized, like, at the first moment, I was taken back a bit. It's like, shit, we're not going to be able to do it. And then I figured, well, no. Basically, what he told me is, I'm not seeing the value in your idea. And I believed that the idea was valuable. I wanted to do it. So I figured, make a better case, right? So I made a much more detailed presentation about what I wanted to do. And I involved our HR manager, Ton, who is, well, we worked side by side for years, and we both really believed in the idea. So we really pitched it again. And our boss said, well, I'm not going to be able to stop you guys. So it wasn't really a glowing recommendation, but at least we got approval, right? We were allowed to do this. And the weekend did happen. We went to that beautiful renovated old school in the Ardennes, and we had presentations, we played with Raspberry Pis, because this was around the time that the first Raspberry Pi 1 came out. We did some coding in groups, and the evening we had a great barbecue, and then the day after we went on the rope course. So it happened. But what also happened is that our boss decided to drive to the Ardennes to join us for the evening barbecue. So he arrived when the knowledge sharing was ending that day, and he saw the end of that, and then he joined us for dinner, and in the evening he drove back home. And from the car, he texted me, and he said, Hannes, this was a great idea. We should be doing this in all of the teams. You've really convinced me of this. And he was big enough to admit that. That meant a lot to me because the approval that I hadn't gotten in the beginning, I got the validation that this was a good thing to do, right? And there's been many stories like that throughout the years. What I want you to take away from that is if you mix fun with learning and you change the scenery, that will yield a great day anyway. But don't be afraid to fight for your ideas, because not everybody has the same frame of reference. Not everybody is going to see it the same way that you see it. And you have to either make them see or be willing to go against the stream a little bit and just do the thing that you found valuable to do. The training story. Now, training is super important throughout all of this. Because as we established, if we are not a rich corporation, we're going to need to train our people. And I haven't explicitly mentioned that until this point of the talk, but our company hires people out of college every year. We hire a bunch of young graduates, and we try to give them a kickstart into their careers. That means that you know that you're hiring people that you're gonna need to invest in continuously over the next 5 to 10 years until they're on a senior level. And then you keep investing, obviously, but you know that it's not gonna be optional. So, accelerating growth can happen in many different ways. And we are often blind to the fact that different people learn in different ways. You can gather knowledge in many different ways. And there's obviously some of the ways that work for us, and those are the ways that we usually gravitate towards. But that doesn't mean that they will work for somebody else. So if you want to train a large group of people, you should offer training in many different forms. Because some people love to read books, some people love to be in a classroom, some people learn best with others in a workshop or through pair programming or whatever. Some people like to be inspired at events like this and then take that back home and then research on their own a little bit. And some people like to watch videos on online platforms like Pluralsight or, I don't know, DomeTrain maybe. I've published some courses on DomeTrain, so that's why I mentioned that. But there's a bunch of different ways to do this, and it's very hard if you're responsible for a big team of people. It's very hard to keep track of what you're doing. So the first step for us was to establish training budgets. It's like, how much are we looking to roughly spend on training each year? On a team level, well, we came to the number by attaching budgets to people's seniority in the company, and then adding it up to a total budget for the team. And it was our responsibility as a coach to make the best use of that money that we could, right? And that's cool, but I could schedule whatever training that I think is interesting, but it won't necessarily match what people would want to take throughout the year. So one of the first mechanisms that we put in place is to give people input. It's like, hey, what do you want to do the next year? How can we match that with maybe something more in the group? And we help people find what's out there. And in the very beginning, that sometimes meant that they would go to specialized training companies to take a course or a conference, workshop, whatever. And the thing that you have to remember is if some of that money goes unspent, you are losing, right? There is no reason to try and go under budget on training. And luckily, our company realized that. They forced us to be around the budget. We could go a little bit over if we wanted. They preferred if we stayed on budget or maybe a little bit under, but there were years where we went over by 10 or 15% because of reasons. We had done something special then that year. But yeah, you have to push your people to use their training budget. Like, even if they don't do it by themselves, you have to push them to spend it. And then we started optimizing the workflow because the team grew and it was hard to start doing it for everybody individually. So every year we launched a big questionnaire for people like, hey, what do you expect from training and knowledge sharing for the upcoming year? Where can you maybe contribute a knowledge sharing session? That was a question. It was always in there, right? And we would bring all of that together, and it was a whole day where we were making a puzzle to figure out, like, what kind of trainings do we need to organize? How can we satisfy most of these needs and maybe get trainers to come to us to teach us those things, right? Because it's always more effective to bring a trainer over and then fill a classroom with 15 people than that you send 15 people to a course. Also, we had some bad experience with those specialized training companies because sometimes we got trainers that only knew the course material but had no production experience with the thing they were teaching. And if you then have a lot of intelligent people in front of you who ask questions, well, the bottom falls out really quickly. So we started getting more control over our speakers. And it's very nice that you two are sitting here because some of the speakers that hired came from your company. We hired some info support people to come and teach us some of the workshops. One of them runs Info Support Belgium now. So we set out to find people that we knew were going to be good teachers and brought those in. So we got a lot more value for the training budget that we were spending. And none of the goal here was to save money because we had to spend the whole budget. Our goal was to do more, like be able to organize more with the same budget. And one of the ideas we had along the line was, we're not going to bother subtracting books from people's personal budget anymore. Because in the worst case, somebody's going to ask us for maybe 5 books a year, right, that they actually read. Let's say that they pick very expensive books and they're 50 euros each. That's 250 euros. If they even spend 1 day of their time reading one of those books, you already come out ahead against any other form of training. So our reasoning is, books are so freaking cheap that if you don't order them by the dozen, we will never deduct them from your training budget. You just ask for the book and we will have Amazon deliver it to your house, fine, or to the office, if you're in the office a lot. Because it's not worth the hassle, and if people are motivated and they learn this way, like, they should not be held back by spending their own money on the books that they want to read. That's like the cheapest training we can get, apart from knowledge sharing evenings, right? It comes in pizza territory, like that cheap. So after the optimization, the company grew, the teams grew, and we are now in a place where our training platform has become self-service. So we built our own tool where people have a budget in points. And the points basically represent both money and time, because every training has both a time component and a money component, because we're a consulting firm and time that people don't spend at the customer is a place where we lose money, right? And we offer a bunch of trainings, much the same way that we did our questionnaire in the past. We still do that, but we do that to fill up the tool. We put in certain conferences, we put in certain e-learning platforms, we put in workshops, we schedule trainers throughout the year. Try to have most of it ready in the beginning of the year. The ones who are in the room can attest that we sometimes fail and it takes until February, maybe beginning of March to get everything in there. But at least we try to put a lot of stuff in there. Because what happened before is, hey, you've assigned that person to that workshop and you've assigned me to that. Yeah, that's what you asked for. But I would have also liked to take that. And we wanted to make that visible to everyone. Like, what's happening? What are other people doing? Because it's inspiring. And now there's a tool where people have a points budget where they don't have to ask for permission for anything. They can just go in, like, I'm going to NDC Porto, which is why these people are in the room right here, right? They just saw, oh, NDC Porto, I'm going to that. Or they can buy a Pluralsight subscription or whatever, and we have some administration flows that are behind it to make to book all the tickets and everything, but they don't need to ask for permission. And the cool thing is, like, going over budget is a warning. So when they spend more points than they have, they get a warning. It's like, hey, you should be talking to your coach about this, but they can still press OK and it'll still get booked. Their coach also gets a warning and they will have that conversation. But that's something like, we didn't want to make that blocking, because if there's a good reason to let them attend, there's also a bunch of people who don't spend all of their points, and in the end, it'll balance out. And as you remember, we want to spend all of the money that we're getting allocated for training. So that means some people have to go over budget to make that happen, right? Now, even with this tool, you have to push people to spend their budget, right? Because some people will go, as soon as the tool is released in the beginning of the year, they will go like, oh, I have this many points and I'm gonna make a puzzle here. And other people will forget, like their life is busy or their job is busy, or and that's okay, but you don't want to leave them behind. So one of the responsibilities of our coaches is to actually talk to those people like, hey, we have seen that you haven't spent any points. What's going on? Is the thing that you want to follow not in the tool? Then we'll add it. Or you're having trouble deciding what's useful for you, then let's have that conversation, that sort of thing. But you still got to push people to spend their budget. And one of the things we've been doing the last few years is to shift towards internal trainers wherever we can. Much like the ideas of having our own people in front of their peers on the knowledge sharing events, there's also a lot of people who love to run a workshop for their colleagues, like a 2-day workshop about subject X or Y. And the cool thing is that usually that comes from production experience. And they maybe will not have the teaching skills of a professional trainer, but that usually is overly compensated by knowledge, right? And I'd rather support somebody on getting the content right for presentation than that I need to be babysitting some external trainer, right? Because also that is a skill that they learn that they will be able to apply even at their customer. Like if you're good at explaining technical concepts, that's also a very valuable skill. So, and the content that we produce for these, it gets reused. Like the first time we do it, it costs a lot of time. Because for every day of workshop, you definitely have at least 2 days of prep and some dry run and so on, and it escalates really quickly. But then next year, we might run the same workshop again because people heard it was good and they want to take it again, so you schedule it again, and it becomes a lot cheaper there. And then a customer comes and goes like, hey, we want to start with this. Oh, we have a guy who can come and run a workshop for you. And it's not, I'm not sure that we're making all of the time back, but in a way it doesn't really matter. Because we see a lot of value in doing this, because we've gotten very quality workshops out of it. Also, it'll be your senior people teaching your less experienced people, which again creates a bond within the company, which is a valuable thing to have. And that frees up budget, and we need to spend all the budget, right? So we, those slides got out of order. That might have been 2 a.m. me who fucked that up. So external trainers, we can now splurge on those. And that means, like, I want to be at a point where a lot of the trivial stuff gets taught in-house, 80%, let's say. And for the 20% of courses, we need to really get industry experts in. Like, we're not going to hire some run-of-the-mill trainer from close by. We're going to hire the person who built it or somebody who works for the company, like somebody who really knows what they're talking about, somebody who can inspire a group of people, make them come over. And these people are expensive, right? You're not starting negotiations on less than 7,000-8,000 euros a day, right? But that doesn't really matter if you have the ability to fill up a whole classroom, right? You can have a lot of people in that training. So we still make those decisions. And that is one of the places where we let people go over budget. Because we have a classroom to fill, the person is coming anyway. The cost of adding an extra person is just a non-billable time, right? So we play around with that a little bit when we do external trainers. I'm going to go back now. In the people teaching our own people atmosphere is we started doing boot camps the first year that I worked for a company. I wasn't even coach yet. But a boot camp for people who came fresh out of college was mainly taught by external trainers. It was mainly taught by external trainers and a few of our own. And over the years to come, we have shifted that completely towards our people teaching the juniors. And it helps us in a couple of ways, because they connect with the senior developers because they are their teachers, so they find their way inside the company. We can bridge the gap between what they learn in college and what they need to do their job, because we have a very good idea of what that needs to be. And it allows us to hire a lot of young graduates as well. It's very intense. Like, they can attest, like they say, no, we've been in college, we're used to learning, but like we cram a lot of content in that boot camp. Because if you only have one day to teach them about subject whatever, you're gonna cram in everything you know, right? And then tomorrow, the next person does that as well, and for them, they cram everything into their day. They just have to keep that pace for the one day, but the trainees have to do it for 5-6 weeks, right? So we hired trainings in the beginning, but we have now evolved into doing all of that in-house. And don't neglect anything that is not just tech skills. We do put job interview skills in there because we know that they will be interviewing at their customers. Some communication skills as well. All of that is very important as well if you're just starting out a career, so you cannot neglect that. It cannot just be all about the tech skills. And I like to call that core skills, because soft skills are not soft at all. And they can often make or break a career. To the point where if somebody's interpersonal skills, or somebody's core skills, as I like to call them, are not good, they can be as good at the technical stuff as they want, they're gonna be limited in certain places. Which means that sometimes that is something you need to remedy. And that's okay, there are ways to remedy that, but it's not something I like to take off of people's trainings budget. Because then they have to choose between whether I'm gonna remedy the situation or learn something new technically, and the reason that they probably got into that position in the first place is because they prefer doing the technical stuff over the interpersonal stuff. So we do this separately, right? We don't deduct like those tracks from the points that they get. But seniors need skills too, even if their communication skills are really good. Because inevitably, they'll land in a job where they will be coaching their junior devs around them. And they will need to give more presentations about technical things, often to non-technical people. So those are skills that those people also need to acquire somewhere. Like, don't be blind to that. It's a set of skills that's very real, and that's definitely going to affect people's careers. So I've stopped calling them soft skills, and I try to call them core skills. And I hope that if I can achieve anything today, it's like to get one of you to do that with me. But what I can take away from training is if we can make our offering as varied as we can, books, workshops, e-learning, and so on, and we can control the budget that we spend, we have to allow people to make suggestions on what needs to get into the platform, because there needs to be a match. We're not going to hold people's hands that your career should be going that direction. They often know. They know where they want to go, and you have to offer them a platform where they can do that. And spend money on the good stuff, like get those industry references into your company. It'll inspire everyone. Like don't be afraid to spend the money, but spend it on stuff that's valuable. And unlock your internal knowledge. And I'm saying this is a journey. This will take years to do. But if you can unlock the knowledge that's already inside your people, that'll free up budget to do other things as well. And push people to spend their budgets, right? And then when you've put all of this in place, you've put your internal knowledge sharing culture in place, and you've worked with training really well, and you managed what your hiring position is going to be in the market and how you're going to deal with that. You've got all of that in place. You'll still see that not every one of your people is going to grow at the same pace. Like some of them will take all those tools and they'll look at them as like, I know what to do. And they'll go like a train. They'll take all of that to heart, and in their head it fits together, and they'll build a career in no time. You'll also get people who are all over the place. Oh, that looks interesting, that looks interesting, that looks interesting. Often see that with more junior people. And that's okay. And at some point they need to get out of that and maybe choose a direction. But like exploring what you like is a very real process of building any career. It's totally fine. And some people will look at all of this and they'll block. It's like, I don't know what to do, right? And it doesn't say anything about this person, whether they're in each one of those categories. It's not a judgment. It's just like, in the situation that I'm in right now, I'm finding myself in this position. And what we decided is that we would appoint coaches inside the company. And we were the first generation of coaches. And now we also have more coaches, our team captains. And approximately one coach per 10 to 15 people is what works for us. But depending on your business and how you run things, that number may be different. Now, what the coach does is they're the single point of contact for somebody in the team to help them build their career. And most of the time, it's no more than on a regular basis, sit down, look at what training they're taking, what they've learned, what they're blocked with, and you follow up on their goals. And goals for us are very much a personal thing. And the goals are owned by the consultant, not by the coach. The consultants set goals for themselves for the coming year and just makes them explicit, right? I'm going to try and do this. Almost never do you get a year that is exactly as you planned, right? Life throws shit in the way. But the coaches help to make that clear. Where do you want to go? Like 3 to 5 years. Okay, what does that mean for the year that's about to come? What steps do you want to take in the direction where you want to be? Have that conversation. And their responsibility is also to unblock them within the organization. It's like, I want to do this, I don't know how to get started or who to talk to. That's also the coach's responsibility to unblock people in that sort of thing inside our company. So the coach is the first point of contact for a lot of things, which means that the coach is also the person who needs to be willing to throw whatever they had planned overboard when they feel like the conversation isn't going in the direction where they had planned it to go, right? You have planned to talk about next year's goals, and you feel like, okay, this guy's dad just died. You can throw everything you've prepared out of the window and talk to that person about how are you doing. And that is a skill that they definitely need to learn. It's very important. And to me, when I'm looking for a coach, I'd love it to be somebody with a technical background, because that means they understand the job that the person in front of them is doing, right? But it needs to be somebody with great interpersonal skills. Not just good, it needs to be great. And they have to be motivated to help others grow. Much more important than the technical skills. If that doesn't get you out of bed in the morning, the coach job's not for you. And that's fine, but we have to be aware of this. And our coaches operate from within the team. They're consultants themselves. They get a part of their time to do this, so they don't have to pile it on top of the time they already spent on everything else. They probably spend more time than they get, but it's always a little bit of a balance. They do get appreciated for all of that in their end-of-year reviews and their pay negotiations. But they operate from within the team, And for us, that system has worked super well. Because of all of those arrows that are pointing various directions, we have managed to convert a lot of them into a more focused way forward for our people. And I think everybody benefits in that scenario. So if you can have coaches to unblock people's growth and to give them mainly a facilitating role, because usually what they do is they know the organization very well, and they just know how to get stuff done, and they know what the values are and what's okay and what's not. And they can escalate things to whichever responsibility that there is inside the company when that's necessary, right? If somebody is threatened to be getting a burnout because of the stuff that's happening, we do have prevention for that. It's not the coach's responsibility. It is their responsibility to maybe spot that and to escalate that, right? And they just do the day-to-day. And that means that for everybody who is stuck on where they want to go with their careers, they have somebody to talk to and possibly just hold up a mirror. Because I always feel like the moments that I had impact on people's career was almost never about the technical stuff. It was almost never about me giving them some much needed insights from me to them. It's mostly asking questions and holding up a mirror, and they are smart people. They will come to their own conclusions. So let's say that, Hannes, I'm charmed by your whole story. I want to do all of this inside my company. Where do we start, right? And there's definitely going to be hurdles if you do this. There's no faking this. You cannot pretend to be doing this. You're either doing this or you're not doing this, right? Because people will feel if you're faking this. And like, you can start really small, but if you want to do all of these things, that takes a lot of effort from a lot of people. And it'll take a long time too, because a lot of this is change in an organization. And change is hard, and change is slow. So be prepared to spend a lot of time on this. And a lot of time meaning a lot of time from getting to where you were now to where you want to be. But you get so many rewards for trying to achieve this. You get to see people grow. You get to see people motivated. You get to see people stay with your organization a long time. In the process of implementing all of this, the .NET team at Access is now around 60 people. It's way too much for one coach to handle, so we now have team captains. And those team captains are often some of our senior people. And most of our team captains today are people who initially started out in one of our boot camps. Seeing that transition, that makes me happy. That's why I choose to contribute to this, right? See people build a long-term future. And if they at some point leave our company, I will still have had a huge impact on their careers. They will have done all of the work by themselves, but just by creating an environment where they can grow, we have had impact, right? So start small. Pick out one or two of these things that you would like to experiment with. You don't have to start the same way, but depending on the buy-in from management, you're gonna be limited to what you can do. If they don't want to give you the training budgets to control, well, then you're gonna have to find other ways. But starting with things like knowledge sharing, or maybe some kind of buddy or coaching system, all of that can be very cheap in the beginning to do, and you can start experimenting with that. And if you then establish value, remember my story with my boss and the weekend, right? If you establish like, hey, this idea is working, it becomes easier to have that conversation about freeing up more budget or more time or whatever to do all of those things. And don't get too nervous. It's one of the things I had to learn the most throughout all of this. Your feedback loop becomes so much longer. As a developer, you hit F5 and it runs. and you see what the thing you just typed did. Your feedback loop is seconds. When you're working with people, your feedback loop is months at best, realistically years, right? So a lot of this takes a long time, and that's okay. You don't have to continuously put effort into it, but you have to keep putting steps in the right direction to get the ball rolling. And that brings me kind of to the end and the insight that I wanted to come to. And those who've seen Pulp Fiction, this is where Jules comes to his whole speech about what he's been struggling with internally. And what he's been struggling with is that maybe the things weren't the way that he hoped they would be. And for me as well, like, if we want to have all of these things, we're gonna have to work extremely hard. And the insights are that we won't always win. People will still leave for big tech companies. You will still lose people that you really appreciate. Does that mean that all of the work is meaningless? No, it's not. It's very important work, and it's definitely an impact on all of the things that we can do. And it made us realize that in an age of AI, having people that know what they're doing, that are good at communicating, that are good at building things, and at understanding things, that's a skill that's never going to go away. But that skill is never going to come in and of itself. You're going to need to create it together. And that's what I wanted to do. And he comes to the insight, and it all lands. And he figures, like, I've had a change of heart about the things that I was doing. We don't need to move too fast for everyone. We need to make sure that we all move forward together. Maybe slowly, it'll take years, but we're going to go there. And don't give up. You will fail at some of the things that you try. And because you've tried them in the open and it involves other people, people will have seen your failure. And that's okay. Because if you're not faking any of this, if you're authentic and open with people about what you think and what you're trying to do and whatever, no hidden agendas, they will accept your failures just as well as they will accept your successes. But it's a hard road. And there will be setbacks. But I think the destination where we're going with this is beautiful, and I want to continue working on this. So that brings us to the end of the movie. And they walk out the door, and I hope that you walk out of this door and you will do something with this, right? But there's one more question I want to ask every one of you. If we put Pulp Fiction into chronological order, what is the last sentence of the movie? Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. Thank you so much. I went over time. I didn't watch the clock. I'm sorry about that.